here. She was born in Galena, Illinois in 1864, married twice. Her first husband, he was a lawyer from her father's Chicago law practice. His name was James Moore, and they made all their wealth through the stock market. Controlling interests, Standard Oil, Union Pacific, U.S. Steel, Nabisco, American Express, Diamond Match Lumber, and the list just keeps on going. There was one son in their marriage. Unfortunately, he passed at the age of 25, and he was a newlywed. He had just married Helen Fargo from the Wells Fargo family. Now, when the Moores lost their only son, they decided, let's go out west. We need a little change of scenery here. Ended up down at Santa Barbara at Montecito, beautiful estate down there. Mr. Moore passed in 1916, and they had been married 34 wonderful years. Now, she married a few years later. Her second husband was Harry French Knight. They had been friends for quite a while. They should have stayed friends. That marriage did not go so well, and a few years into it, Laura Knight got a divorce. Right after the divorce, she ended up discovering Emerald Bay. She owned property on the north shore of the lake, never really explored on this side too much, and then she met the two women that owned it at that time. It was a mother and daughter. They had a fishing resort going on down here, only in the summertime, and they had had it almost 40 years in their family. Now she came over and had tea with them, and right away started asking if they would sell it to her. She fell in love with this beautiful property. And at first they told her no, they did not want to sell, but she kept at it, and they finally agreed, yes, we're going to sell. And she ended up with 239 acres. 1928, she paid $250,000 for it, which was a lot of money back in 1928. But she took control of this end of the bay, all the shoreline, all the way out to the island. She got that island, and then all the property that's behind the house. She wanted a Scandinavian-style home because this area reminded her of her travels to Scandinavia. And she thought it would blend in rather well here. All the materials to build Vikingsholm came from the Lake Tahoe Basin. This rock is granite, and they got it right from a hillside that's behind the house. All the wood was a special order that came from the north shore of the lake. It's fir and pine. Leaded stained glass windows. You're going to see them all over this home. And when the light shines through those, it really lights up the room. They were all brought from Sweden. So the house is really a combination of Lake Tahoe and Scandinavia put together. Now, she hired a Swedish architect to design the home for her, and she told him he could not cut down the big trees when he was doing the construction. He had to build around all these trees. So the design for Vikingsholm really was dictated by the trees. This one right here, that is a ponderosa pine, estimated between 300 to 500 years old. And that's not one of our biggest trees, but thanks to Laura Knight now, we have all these beautiful old growth trees that she saved. Summer of 1929, they brought in 200 men to work on the project, housed them in some barracks over this way, and they built the home in 5 months, which is pretty amazing when you see all the details, especially when you go inside. And not only were they working on the home, they also put the little castle that's on top of the island out there. That is the tea house. And Laura Knight and her guests would go over there by motorboat to have tea in the afternoon every now and then. So it's a very gracious style of living going on down here. But it was mainly friends and family that would come and join her here mid-June till about mid-September. Now, she owned this property for 15 years. In 1945, she came in on her 15th summer. She did pass away in the house. She was 82 years old and one of the wealthiest women in the nation. Very kind, generous woman. Vikingsholm was actually completed a week before Black Tuesday hit and the start of the Great Depression. She ended up building a community center down in Santa Barbara. She wanted to help anyone in need down there. She was one of the lucky few that maintained her wealth. So that community center, they could get food, clothing, housing, and medical costs. Anything anyone in that community needed, she provided to them. Sponsored a lot of youth groups, and she sent a lot of young women through college. That was important to her, and she made sure that happened for a lot of young women. Sorry, my voice is starting to go. And she's the one that signed the check that sent Charles Lindbergh across the Atlantic to Paris. So she had her fingers in a lot of different things. Really a good woman. Excuse me. Now, when she passed away, Vikingsholm offered up to her family. They all said no, thank you. Passed. It was sold to a rancher in Nevada. He only had it for 1 year. He sold it to Harvey West. He was a lumberman out of Placerville. Mr. West bought this as a vacation home for his family. When he bought Vikingsholm, all of Laura Knight's furniture, her cars, her boats, everything was included, and he kept it original to how she had that. So when you go inside, everything you're gonna see goes back to Laura Knight. We're very lucky to have so many of her original belongings. He had the property for about 5 years, and then he decided it was time to sell. He didn't get a lot of interest except from a hotel chain, and they came in and said, we're gonna tear everything down, put a hotel and create a private resort right here. And when Harvey heard those plans, he said no to them. He would not sell. He wanted this to stay open for everybody to enjoy. So he worked with the state of California, came to an agreement, 1953, they came to an arrangement. He gave them everything. He basically walked out that door, turned the key, and they paid him $125,000. So that was considered a donation by Mr. West. And once the state had this piece of Emerald Bay, they bought up the rest and created Emerald Bay State Park. So we really do have Harvey West to thank for doing that. So now we get to enjoy the beautiful area here, you know, and not have it go private. So thank you, Harvey, wherever you are. So we're gonna go inside the home. I'll stop in the living room. I'll finish up out in the courtyard, and then I'm gonna open it up and you can walk around and look at everything all on your own. We have a little longer today since I'm the only tour guide here. It's not such a rush. So welcome to Vikingsholm. Let's go on inside.